Hello and welcome to Shattered Ice Gaming, and today is a very special episode for me, because today we are going to be looking at my very first preview copy of a board game, which makes me feel like a real board game reviewer. And that game is Terminus Frontier. Forgeborn Games were kind enough to send me a preview copy of this game. And the first thing I should say is, this is not a paid preview. I just reached out to them, told them I thought the game looked awesome, and they were kind enough to take a look at my channel and say, yeah, sure, we'll send you a copy, so here it is. So every opinion in this is going to be my own, but the reason I reached out to them in the first place is because after I looked at this game's Kickstarter page, I just thought it looked so interesting, and it has some really cool, unique mechanics in there. So let's take a look at it. So with this being a preview copy, currently the rulebook is in digital format, so I've had to print my own copy of it out, which is perfectly fine, except my printer's not very good and running out of ink, as I'm sure you can tell. And it is a pretty thick rulebook. It's about 60 pages long, but that's because there is a lot of stuff in this game. So just while I get all these bits and pieces out, they did send a nicely printed demo scenario book with a few missions to play through, which I will be playing through these and putting them on the channel. So while I get these bits and pieces out, I'll just tell you what the game is. So this is a science fiction themed game where you will be travelling around the stars in kind of a travel phase, taking control of a character in a group called, I think it's called Watchpoint, and they're kind of like the freedom fighter sort of characters of these colonies on the outer rim of the galaxy. And of course, there's going to be like big evil corporations, criminal underworlds, aliens, pirates, all that sort of thing is all going to come into play. And the game, like a lot of these sorts of games these days, is divided into two sections. You have the mission section, where you will be going around on board tiles. This is one of the smaller ones, but board tiles such as this for interior and exterior spaces. So you're on the planet's surface, you're inside a colony habitat, or whatever it may be. You'll be travelling around, fighting baddies, saving colonists, all the usual sort of stuff you'd expect from a game like this. Between missions, you will be flying your spaceship to different subsectors, interacting with kind of marketplaces, colonial administrators. You can even choose your path in this game, where you can kind of side with the corporations or side with the colonies. There's all sorts of interesting things that look to be involved in that space travel section. The preview copy doesn't contain that, but you know, the game is still kind of in development. So I don't know exactly how that's all going to work just yet, but on their Kickstarter page there are some details, and it looks pretty cool. It looks involved lots of events, lots of travelling and discovery and that sort of thing. Now unfortunately, I did come to this game a little bit late in terms of getting this preview copy, because the Kickstarter has already ended. But if you watch this video and you like what you see, then you can still late back the game. And to be quite frank, looking at the funding this game received, it got some good funding, but I think it's underfunded. And I don't think they'll be able to make it. What I mean is, when I looked at this game, I just thought it looked so fantastic that you've got games out there like Gloomhaven that get like over $1 million when they put something on Kickstarter. And not that Gloomhaven's a bad game or anything, but I just felt like this was like, wow, I wish these guys had got more money. You know, I wish it just looks like it's got everything in a board game that I've ever kind of wanted. And we'll get into that in a moment when I start talking about a few of the mechanics. And so these are your board tiles, or the main ones that have been included. You know, they're pretty nice textures and all that sort of thing. So that's what you'll be playing most of your missions on. Since they're here, let's take a look at these. These are the tracker boards for enemy squads. You've got Beta Squad, Delta Squad, and Alpha Squad. Nicely colour-coded in yellow, red, and black. And all this is, it's a health tracker. So a squad can contain up to 8 enemies, and this tells you how much health they've got. You'll use a cube to mark their health and count down. So these are a really nice, handy thing to have to keep track of those health values, and also to kind of delineate which enemy is in which squad by these simple colour codes. So they're a really cool little feature. Now, let's take a look at this handy little box here that I'm storing these doors in. So you've got, you know, your usual thing you'd expect of a game like this, opening doors. But these little boxes are in fact part of the board. Because this is one of the few games I've seen that use 3D terrain. And yeah, there's a few other games that do this, but it's a nice little thing to have. You've got these ladders on the side of them, so you can climb up and have your character stand on top of here, maybe sniping from a distance or in some epic melee fight, in which you can, in fact, knock enemies off of the top of here, and indeed be knocked off yourself. And there's some mechanics for falling damage with that. So they're another cool little feature. That 3D element gives this game a lot of table presence, and table presence is a word that could really apply to this game. The quality of it just looks so good in this prototype. Like, everything is so nice and clear. Feels really well made. And of course, like many games of this type, you will be using miniatures to represent your heroes. Now, there is the base game that comes with standees to represent everything. So if you're not bothered about miniatures, you can get the core game, which has standees. And then if you want miniatures for all the enemies, you get kind of an upgrade box that you can buy. So it will cost you a little bit more to get all the miniatures. But to be honest, even without miniatures, I would still have got this game. Of course, I love painting miniatures, so I did get the miniatures box as well. But if you're not too fussed for them, then you don't need them. You get everything you need in the base box. However, even in the base box, you will get miniatures to represent your heroes. And I have some prototypes here that were sent along with this game of those miniatures. So these are 3D printed. Now, they weren't painted, and I did ask Forgeborn Games if they were okay with me painting them, and they said they were. So hopefully, let's get a better view of this guy. If they are watching this video, hopefully they are not too offended by my sloppy stabbing of a brush attempt at painting these miniatures. But this guy is the Vanguard. He's kind of like your soldier hero, who kind of comes across as being a bit of the captain sort, but he's not actually designated as the leader of the team or anything. So he's pretty cool. Then we've got the Operative, who is, of course, as you can tell, a sneaky sniper. And then we have the Maverick, who is, as should be fairly clear there, kind of your Wild West cowboy gunslinger type. Now, these are prototypes and are 3D printed from resin. So I will just say, this miniature, unfortunately, the Postal Service didn't do a very good job of looking after it during the delivery, and her leg had snapped off. So I've actually had to glue this leg back together and kind of rebuild some bits of it. So the actual miniature of the Maverick looks a little bit better. Her leg doesn't look quite so crumpled up here because, you know, it hasn't been broken by the Postal Service, or hopefully it won't have been. But she's pretty cool. I really like the pose. The actual pose is pretty much the same as this. And then lastly we have the Zealot, who is kind of like your big tanky fighter. But anyway, I think he's a really cool miniature as well. Now this huge cybernetic arm he's got. And those are the 4 characters you will have the choice to play as. So we'll just take a look at the Vanguard. And if we look at his character board, the first thing you'll notice is these nice slots here for head, arms, chest and legs, because this game uses body locations for your various bits of gear. So you can wear one set of boots, you can wear one piece of armour, you can wear one set of gloves and one helmet. And those fit nicely on your board, so you don't have a big stack of equipment cards next to you. You can clearly see what you've got just by looking at your character board. But what's even better is, if you notice, each location has a health bar. And this is something I've wanted to see in board games for kind of a long time. Now, enemies don't have hit locations in this game, but they don't really need them. But it's cool that you have these hit locations. Enemies can hit you in different areas. you'll have a health bar for each location, and if your head, arms or legs are reduced to 0 health, you gain a trauma card, which is basically like a debilitating card. You will have some negative effects on your character, and then any damage you take to that location afterwards will go onto your body, which is your main health location. And when this is reduced to 0, you will draw, I think they're called severe trauma cards, which basically they could eliminate you from the game, or they could give you some very serious debilitating side effect that pretty much puts you out of the game. But it's essentially, this is your main health bar, and then these are extra ones where if they get reduced, bad things happen. So I really like that. I really like these multiple health bars. The fact that you could be shot in different locations. And then here, you can see a little deck of cards with the number 5 on. And that's because this game, like many games now in this sort of dungeon crawling genre, use action cards. And that's really cool for a lot of the tactical things you can do. Essentially in this game, action cards work like special abilities. Each character has their own deck of special abilities of things they can do. And you also have 6 basic actions you can do. So it kind of combines the best of both worlds from those more classic dungeon crawlers like Descent and things like that, where you had sort of 4 or 5 basic actions that you would perform, and then ability cards just kind of off to the side. And then across the top we have this resolve track. Come on then. You want to be in the spotlight? Right, go on now. Go on, I'm busy. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so the resolve track, these are kind of like your resource tokens. You know, you get them in lots of board games as like your little power-up sort of things. And as you build resolve, you will have access to character-specific special abilities that are not on your cards. You can use them at any time. Let's set the Vanguard up and take a look at how a character actually looks, and then I can start talking about various little other bits of mechanics. So here's your player board, and there's plenty of space on these boards with these clearly noted areas where all your equipment goes. So first thing we want to do for our Vanguard is take the Vanguard's mantra. Now this is what those resolve tokens I was referring to are for. So you spend different number of resolve tokens to do these various abilities, and I'll go through those in just a second. Next you have his action deck, which is all nicely marked by the picture and title on the back, and these are essentially going to be, for the majority, these are going to be your actions, which they all have a nice little title at the top. They have this yellow number here, which tells you how many actions it costs to use them. So this one is actually 0 action points. So essentially a free action. Command, target ally within 8 spaces, the target gains a +1 damage token. So you'll have other things as well. And if you notice on some of these, they've got this red number on this side, and this increases your threat value. Because the way this game works with target priority for the enemies is each character will gain threat over the course of the game, and whoever has the highest threat is usually, but not always, the character that the enemies target. We'll go into that into a little bit more detail later. And this one, combat tactic, move 2 spaces, full auto, attack, and you may ignore 1 miss during the attack, so this will become clear what these mean in a moment. So that's your deck of action cards, which would go there. And then we come on to the character's weapons, which these were the big selling point for me with this game. I really, really liked the look of how combat works in this game. But I'm going to put his M42 Redeemer pulse rifle and his monosword X2 there, and we'll explain those in a moment because I have been delaying talking about these mantras with the resolve tokens. So as you gain resolve up here, you'll be able to spend those resolve tokens to use these abilities. And then this one here, that costs 4 resolve tokens, Legion Breaker, that's your ultimate ability. And that would allow the Vanguard to reload his gun because reloading is a thing in this game, another thing I really like. I've always wanted to see games with reload, and the only other game I can think of that really does it is the Resident Evil board games. But the way this game does it is really, really cool, which we'll see in a moment. So after you reload, you'll be able to fire your gun on burst mode with +1 damage twice, so a very powerful ability. And the thing about these resolve tokens is the spaces are numbered, because as you accrue them throughout the course of a game, you can only ever get up to 7, and once they're spent, that's it, they're gone. So you have to think about how you want to do this. You know, you could save them all up, and you could use Legion Breaker once, and then maybe you could use redirect 3 times, but there is only enough to really do 3 of these. You'll never be able to do all 4, because you only get 7 resolve tokens. So all this talk about reloading and burst and things like that, we're going to have a look at how weapons work. And this game doesn't use dice, which is another thing I really like about it. I don't mind dice chucking games, but I really like card combat. And in this, you get an ammo deck. And this is the ammo deck for our pulse rifle. So, if we look at our pulse rifle, it tells us here, it's a firearm, it's a pulse rifle, and it has 3 fire modes. Pulse, which is single shot, burst, which is a burst of shots, and full auto, which is, of course, pray and spray. And then down here, we've got its range, so it can be fired from 1 to 7 spaces away. And its deck is a pulse rifle deck, because each type of weapon, you have pulse rifles, sniper rifles, shotguns, and pistols, are the 4 weapon types, and each one has its basic deck, which will be described on the card here in this bottom corner. So this tells you it's the pulse rifle card, and it has 7 cards in its deck. So, how exactly do these work? Well, that deck is your ammo deck. And when you make an attack, you pick your fire mode, or dependent on what the action card says. Okay, that one is not the right one. So this one tells us we can fire it on pulse or burst. So if you were playing this card, you would pick pulse mode or burst mode. If you fire on pulse, you would draw the top card of your ammo deck. And we would see here, it inflicts 3 hits, which is very nice. Now, if you were to fire it on burst, instead of drawing that top card alone, you would draw the top card, which gives us a direct hit, 2 damage, ignores cover and armor. So that's pretty good. That's guaranteed damage to the enemy. You would then draw a second card, which just gives us 1 damage. And then this symbol shows us another card with an X over it, which means you would draw this third card. So on pulse, that would have been a very nice result, but because we're firing on burst, it would only do 1 damage. So you do get cards that do different effects based on how you fired it. The problem for us, though, is we don't get that 1 damage, because this red X means that this card is discarded and doesn't get resolved. And that kind of represents when you're firing on burst, you get to draw more cards, but it's not as accurate. And if you fire on full auto, you will draw 3 cards and discard 2 of them. So we were to do that with the remainder of our deck. We'd go 1, 2, 3. And what we'd get here is we're firing on full auto, so it'd be 1 damage, and then 2 damage, so that'd be 3. This third card we drew, inaccurate, says miss. But this isn't an automatic miss. This symbol here is the suppression condition symbol. Over the course of the game, you will get these suppression cards based on a few factors. Sometimes enemy abilities, sometimes just as your character gets more tired as you play. And if you had one of those cards in your hand, then that entire attack would be a miss. Presuming the Vanguard doesn't have one, he wouldn't miss. He would still do that 3 damage. But of course, there is no damage bonus from this. Now, we've just drawn 3 cards, and you might be thinking, well, there's 2 cards to be discarded there, so what do we do? Well, the good thing is that if you fire on full auto or burst, and you don't have cards to discard, you can still do it. You can still fire the weapon. It just means you've now run out of ammo. So if you only have 3 cards left, then, you know, it might not be a bad idea to just fire on full auto, because you don't need to worry about discarding them. Now, when all the cards are discarded, so we've fired all of our shots, and our pulse rifle's ammo deck is empty, these cards will stay in a discard pile, face up, until you use a reload action. And that reload action means you take the deck and you shuffle it. And it's as simple as that. And that's how you reload your gun. It's very simple, but personally I absolutely love it. I think it's really thematic. It combines mechanics with the idea of, you know, combat reloads and things like that. What is also very clever about it is it gives you a lot of tactical options available to you, because you don't have to wait till your gun's empty to reload it. Let's say you fire on full auto and you get 3, 4, 5, and then you have your 2 cards you discard, a 2 and a miss. You've drawn the miss, so they are all in your discard pile now, and you have 2 cards left. And the more you play this game, the more you will get to know this deck of cards. So it's entirely possible that you could know exactly what these 2 cards are. I don't, because I'm not that familiar. But let's have a look. So that's not a bad result. If you'd fired on pulse twice, you'd have got 2 pretty good shots there. So this is so clever though, because there is also the fact that if you've only got 1 card left in your deck, and you know your deck, and you know that last card is this inaccurate card, well, you don't need to wait around. You can just use an action to reload and shuffle the entire deck back together. So it gives you this kind of element of tactical reloads as well, where you can be very thoughtful about how many shots you've fired, what's left in your deck, and when is the best time to reload your gun. And that's ranged combat. And this was kind of the big selling point for me with this. I love this system. You know, we've seen kind of combat modifier decks in things like Gloomhaven, and I think this sort of takes a similar vein to that and then just expands on it and makes this deck such a fantastic little thing. It just opens up so many more options and opportunities. I really, really liked this. As soon as I saw it, I thought, oh, this might be a game I'm getting. But I'll just go through close combat first. So we have a very similar thing with the Mono Sword X12. It's melee weapon, a sword. And with this you have strike or combo. So you don't have a full auto version on this. You only have 2 different fire modes, for lack of a better term. And it's a sword with 7 cards. And this is the deck for the Mono Sword. And this is one of the few things, because I am going to, you know, talk about a few little criticisms I have as we go. And it's not a major thing, but it is that the back of these decks are also called ammo cards. Now, it's very clear in the rulebook that a sword doesn't use ammunition, of course. This actually represents more like your stamina. So from a financial perspective, I can understand why they're just called ammo cards. I would kind of like to see them be called stamina cards or something instead, just to, you know, stop any possible confusion of which deck is which. You know, things get muddled up on the table sometimes. But this works pretty much the same way, in that you will make your attack. Now, it can be based on your action card. We looked at that action card earlier. But you can use basic actions in this game, and one of them is a melee attack. One of them is also a ranged attack. So you don't need one of your action cards to attack. You can basically discard one of these cards without resolving the action and use it for a basic action. So we could spend that, flush them out, and say we're going to use that for a basic 1 action point melee attack. And then we do the same. We decide, are we going to strike or are we going to combo? And it's the same thing. Draw 1 card for a strike, draw 2 cards for a combo, and then discard 1 card. But what about when your deck runs out? Because, like I said, it's a sword. It doesn't use bullets, right? So why would you have to reload a sword? Well, you don't. Unlike the assault rifle or any other firearm, where when the deck is empty, it sits there until you reload. That's not the case with melee weapons. You can just make another attack, and at that point, you would shuffle this deck and just start drawing from it. So what's different about that? Well, there is one major difference, that when you carry on using your melee weapon without using a reload action, you have to shuffle into the deck one of these special arm strain cards, which is just a complete miss, and then once you draw this card, you remove it from your deck. So if you draw this card, the entire attack will miss. Of course, that has the same ammo backing. And what this represents in game terms is when you reload your sword, as it were, it doesn't represent you reloading, it represents you resting your arm for a moment. So it kind of brings in sort of a stamina kind of mechanic, where the more you swing this sword, the more attacks you do with it, and dish out this damage, eventually you're going to get tired. And at that point, you have the choice to either take a moment to rest and shuffle this deck with a reload action, or you carry on swinging in desperation, and you don't have to spend an action, but you do get that miss card in there, which of course you can then draw at any point when you continue to attack. And so far we're doing really well. It's right down at the bottom. No, second from so in that case that would have been pretty good to just continue swinging away, but of course this could end up at the top. So this just gives that push your luck kind of element to the melee combat a little bit more than with ranged combat. But those are the main differences, and I think it's a really cool, simple difference between melee and ranged weapons that makes them feel just that little bit more thematic, that little bit different. And now, of course, just like with all games like this, as you play through it, you will gain new equipment, new weapons, and all sorts. So let's take a look at another weapon and just see how they upgrade and how they work differently. So we have here this F46 Hellfire rifle, very much an upgraded version of that pulse rifle. So we've got the cost value here in V creds, the money's called in this game, so it's 400 creds. It's firearm pulse rifle. Now this time, if we look, it's a little bit different up here. Whenever we fire this on pulse, we draw a card, but we also automatically do an extra point of damage, which makes its pulse capabilities even better. Burst is the same, draw 2 cards and discard 1. It's full auto, we draw 3 cards and discard 2, but if we look at this, it means the attack will affect enemies that are left, right, in front or behind it. Not diagonally, the game does use diagonals, but some weapons and effects may have a diagonal sort of effect, but a lot of them are in this kind of cross pattern, so it's a very powerful weapon. It also has Meltdown. You may discard a condition token from your target to inflict +2 damage, so again you've got the option there to apply extra damage. This one has a range of 8, and if you're at range 1 to 3, you will do another +1 damage. So as if it's not powerful enough, you use that same 7-card pulse rifle deck, but you also add a full discharge and a stable ammo card. Now, I don't have them with me right now, so I won't show you them. So this would actually have a total deck size of 9 because of those 2 extra cards, and it has 1 upgrade slot. And this is one of the really cool things in this game, because for those of you who watched my playthroughs, you know I forget rules, I forget things all the time. Having an upgrade card off to the side of this, I would forget what that upgrade does. In this game, the way these upgrades work is you have to craft them, and what you will do is you will craft a new ammo card. Now, I don't think there are any included with this prototype that you would craft as kind of upgraded weapon cards, or upgraded ammo cards, should I say. But it might be something like an ammo card, and on this side it might say, I don't know, high explosive round or something, and it does, I don't know, 4 damage to all enemies within 2 spaces, something like that, whatever it might be. And once you've crafted that, you would add that to your deck. So those kind of special weapon attachments and upgrades are all contained within this deck, which means this integrated core mechanic of the game that drives the combat also contains all of your weapon upgrades, so you never have to worry about forgetting them. Essentially, you will always draw them at some point. It does mean there's a little bit of randomness to when you draw them. You might not be able to use it just when you want, but it's gonna be in there. You know, it's gonna come up. And talking of randomness of drawing cards, there's one more thing to talk about with weapon attacks. and that is you have a basic action called aim, which not surprisingly is aiming your weapon. And if you spend an action to do this, so you throw away an action card, you get to look at the top card of your ammo deck, and we see this is 1 damage. Then you get to decide, do you place that on the top or on the bottom of your deck? So it's 1 damage, maybe we want to put it to the bottom of the deck because it's not very good. And then when we take our shot, we draw the next card. So instead, we've got 2 damage from that. Now, when you aim, if it's on an action card, you will have like aim 1, aim 2, aim 3. And that number represents how many cards you get to look at. So if you had an action card that gave you the opportunity to do an aim 2, you would draw the top 2 cards of the ammo deck. And then you could choose to put them back on the bottom of the deck or the top of the deck in whatever order you choose. So with these 2, you might want to fire on pulse. So you say, I'm going to take perfect aim and put it on the top. You fire your shot on pulse, you get your 3 damage, and this means it ignores enemy cover. Now with your next shot, you know it was that 2 damage card. So you might say, okay, I'm going to fire this one on burst. So you do 2, you do 3 for a nice 5 damage attack, and then you discard that card. So I know I've been banging on about these weapons and this ammo deck for about 10 minutes now, maybe more. Because like I say, this was the selling point of the game for me. I love this system. I think this is so cool. The way it integrates so much from the upgrades and everything else. And it's just so simple. It's so simple and easy to play. You know, you draw some cards, you calculate the damage, you remove your enemy's defense, and then there you go. That's it. The attack's done. So I don't want to go on about that too much longer. So we're going to talk about the second big selling point for me in this game, and that was this. This is essentially the initiative board for the game. Lots of games now use initiative tracks and things like that to determine player order. You know, in the old days it was the heroes go, then the baddies go. A lot of games now, a little bit more in depth with that, where different characters will have different initiatives and they'll go at different speeds. This game does a similar thing, but really does its own thing that is fantastic. And so we've got 2 sides to this board, threat and squad formation. We'll look at the threat side in just a moment. The first thing we want to look at is squad formation. Now the squad formation it's a fancy way of saying initiative track. So our initiatives go from 0 all the way to 12. At the start of your turn, each character will get one of these character tokens, and you place these on this initiative track where you want to activate. So there are 12 possible spaces, going from 0 all the way down to 12. Now if you notice, every other space, the even numbers, have all got hostiles written next to them. So these numbers are the initiative points where the enemies will act, and the odd numbers are where the heroes will act. And what's really clever about this is that where you place your hero token will determine how many actions you get and a few other things. So let's say you want to go really early in the round. You can choose to place yourself on point. This would increase your threat level, which is this track down here that we'll look at in a moment, by 3. And you would receive 2 action points, but you would get to go very early in the round. Unless a hostile activates at initiative 0, you're going to be going first. So you can get in and do a quick bit of damage right at the start. But if you were to say go a little bit later, initiative 3, still very fast, but maybe not the first, and take the flanking position, you would still only get 2 actions, but your threat would only increase by 2. And this symbol means you would get to make a free move action of 2 immediately. So you would do that right now. You wouldn't even wait for your turn. You would just be able to move 2 spaces straight away. If you take the primary gunner role, you'd get +2 threat, but you'd gain 3 actions. So this adds a real level of tactical depth to this game. Right at the start of a turn, just picking when you want to act during the turn is a decision-making process. What is the best thing for you to do? Is it best for you to run in and get those attacks off? Or do you really need to move right now? Can you move 2 spaces and get yourself out of a sticky situation? Then you might want to go with flank. Or maybe you just want to do a lot of damage, in which case you could take the fire gunner roll down here and you'd gain a +1 damage token and you would get 3 action points. we looked at the action cards, and you'll see they have an action point value on them. Most of them cost 1 action point. Some cost 2. So in a situation like this, with this light 'em up, for example, costs 2 action points, increases your threat by 1, but you get to do a pulse or a burst, then move, then do a pulse, burst, or full auto. So that means for 2 action points, you're essentially getting to do 3 different things. And then you would still have an action point left over if you took that fire gunner roll. So you might then be able to play full auto for an extra action and get another movement of 2 and another full auto. So it all depends on what you're wanting to do. But really taking a moment to think about when your team want to activate during the round is kind of critical to the game. And I just think this is an absolute work of genius. I think this is so clever that it makes every step of the game so involved. And if you go very late in the round, like if you were to take the rear guard position, you would actually reduce your threat by 3, you'd heal 2, and you would get to reload. So sometimes you might be wanting to go very late in the round, because if it decreases your threat enough, it means somebody else might become the target, and it gives you that moment of respite to just gather yourself up and get ready for the next turn where you're going to go in for a big attack. And that kind of brings us on to the threat board and how that works. So every character will have a second one of these character tokens. That begins here on the threat track down at 0. And as you gain threat, as you may have guessed, you move up the track. So depending on where you go, depends where you end up on this track. So if you take that flanker position, you'd get 2 threats, and your token would be here. Anybody below you on the track is a lot less likely to be targeted. But here's the other really clever thing. These blue symbols with the Roman numerals in them down here. Well, this is how you collect resolve. Each time you move to one of these spaces on the threat track, you will gain a resolve token, which is one of these. Now, these are numbered because you may remember on your player board, resolve tokens are numbered. So we've got resolve token number 1, that would go in space number 1. And once you've got all 7, that's it. You don't collect any more. You don't collect a resolve token each time you go onto this space. So what this does, it helps you track the resolve tokens you've got. So that's a very clever way of helping you keep track of things. And if you get all the way up to threat level 10, you can see you've got these 2 symbols here. One is a +1 damage. So when you're threat level 10, you're going to get one of these damage tokens that help you put out a bit more damage. But you're also going to gain this crosshair token here, which is the marked target token. And if you are a marked target, the enemies ignore cover when attacking you. So getting all the way up to threat level 10, it has its advantages and drawbacks. You don't want to stay there for too long. And like I say, just this whole board as a general system is just a fantastic way of determining who is going to be attacked and who is going to act when. And of course the enemies go on these red spaces, so you can have activations where it goes friendly, enemy, and goes back and forth like that. And that brings us on to how enemies work. And like many games nowadays that have this solo play / cooperative play, they use an AI deck. So nobody actually has to control the enemies. And you will construct these AI decks according to the scenario, such as this one here. And you will actually have scenario events buried within the deck, which you will, when you draw this card, you will read the event appropriate. So in this case, event A, you will find that in the scenario book and read out what happens. But if we take a look at this hostile force card, so you'll draw this AI card after you've put yourself on this board and made all your decisions. And you'll have a title, Seize the Initiative, unprepared for your squad, sudden assault, the enemy is taken by surprise. So this tells you everything the enemy are going to do. It's going to tell you who they target, whoever's got the highest threats. This is almost always the case, although sometimes it can be different. You never quite know for certain, but it's nearly always whoever has the highest threats. And then the breakdown here tells you that the black enemy squad will operate at initiative 6, the yellow enemy squad will activate at initiative 8, and the red at initiative 10. So in that instance, if you had 3 types of enemy squad out, one of each colour, you would take their 3 activation tokens and you would place the black one at 6, the yellow one at 8, and the red one at 10. And then this would be where they activate. And then it tells you what the enemy action is for each type of enemy. So black squad and yellow squad would do a take cover move, and then they would use their red attack, which I'll cover in just a moment. Whereas red squad, they would advance and do their red attack. So there are different types of movement for enemies. Advance is basically just rush towards the closest hero, or rush towards the priority target hero, should I say. Take cover means they will try to get to the nearest piece of cover and then attack the target enemy, or the target hero, should I say. So let's take a quick look at an enemy's card. The black enemy squad would activate first and they would try to take cover. Let's say the black enemy squad are these Scrapper Raiders. So it tells us down here they have a health value of 8 and they move 3 spaces. So that black squad is going to move 3 spaces to try and get into cover, and then it's going to do its red attack action. So each enemy type has 4 different types of action they will do. Mostly these are attacks, although not always. The red one is their most basic. So this tells you they're going to shoot with their rifle. It's a ranged attack, and they draw an orange ammunition card, and it's within range 6. And then the other things here, like they would charge, they would take cover. So some of them actually supplement their movement that they've already got. So if this was to do the, let's say this arrow action, this kind of orange one here, instead of the red one, then it would use its take cover, but then it would do this, so it would then charge. So they may get more movement as well, depending on the AI card and depending on the actions on here. But what does this mean? How do enemies attack? So we know he attacks at range 6, and we've got the little ammo deck card symbol, but this one's orange. And that's because enemy attacks are a little bit more simple than the Drift Hunters. So enemies have 3 attack decks. They have light fire, heavy fire, and melee. So when we look at their card, the yellow card is light fire. So all you would do for that Scrapper is draw the top card of this light fire deck. So you draw the light fire card, and it does 1 damage and hits the character in the hand or the arms. Because remember, as we talked about, you have different body locations, so this damage would be applied to your arm health bar. And as you can see, you get a miss, hits to the body. This one would inflict a suppression card on you. So of course there's also heavy fire, which is a little bit more dangerous. You know, 3 damage right there. But if we look at the Scrappers, they're pretty easy going, and all of their cards are light fire. When it does its charge attack here, I'm not sure if this is a misprint because that's blue. I think that should be purple. I'm not sure whether this is a misprint or they're just using blue for the melee cards. But you've got the melee symbol there, so you know this is a melee attack. So instead, you would draw a melee attack card. And that's as simple as it is of how they work. And you've obviously got different compositions of these decks. So that is pretty much the basics for combat in this game. You'll be using this initiative board to decide when you go. That will affect your threat, which affects how much the enemies target you. You'll be playing your own ammo cards to do your attacks, as well as your action cards to decide what you're going to do. And when it's the enemy's turn, they are going to reference their AI card, do a movement, and then perform an action. So the turn structure is pretty simple and straightforward, but within those simple mechanics, there is lots of choice, lots of variability, and these two things together, those ammo decks, the action cards as well, and this squad formation board, they all combined together that when I was looking for the rules for this game, I just thought these guys, if they've hit the nail on the head with this, they've put everything into a game I want to see. I've got ammo management, I've got reloading, I've got different body locations on my hero to worry about, I've got pulse shots, burst shots, full auto shots, I can put weapon upgrades into my deck, I get modifiers based on how close or far away I am from the target. There's so much crammed into 3 relatively simple systems that I felt those things alone were enough to merit me backing this game. I am definitely going to get the optional add-ons for this game because I just think it looks that good. I have a lot of confidence in this project, and looking at everything in this prototype, it looks like it's already well on the way. There's so much stuff included with this. I mean, in this prototype, this is the massive deck of gear cards that they've sent with it. It's, you know, it's like between 4 scenarios, I'm never going to see all this equipment, but there's already so much here. These different kind of gear cards you can get, you know, you can just look at a few. Okay, advanced items, so sometimes you'll find a gear card that lets you draw a more advanced version, standard weapon. See what we've got. So, you know, smoke grenades. Again, you would place these with your character board in the gear slots along the bottom. And now for a single action point, you can throw a smoke grenade. Or you've got a reflex sight. Again, another piece of gear. Doesn't cost you any actions, but you can use an aim 1 action for free. And they've also got charges for how many times per game you can use them. So I mean, just look, there's suppressors. Suppressors, actually, that brings me on to another point of this game. There's basically 3 types of game mode in this. There's your basic sort of skirmish, your usual kind of firefight and, you know, rescue the hostages, retrieve the objective, whatever it might be. But then you also get stealth-based scenarios, and this is where things like suppressors come in. So your shoot actions no longer advance the alarm track. So when you're playing a stealth mission, you'll have an alarm track, and whenever you make noise, that track will move up, and if it gets to the top, the alarm is sounded, all the guards are alerted, and your life becomes a lot harder. But before the alarm gets activated, enemies will be moving around based on this patrol deck, and you'll have various tokens you lay out on the board that show you the direction the enemy's moving. And they'll draw these cards to see how they move. So move, and then +1 detect range, so the enemies will be better at detecting you. Now, what else have we got? So in this case they'd move, but they'd get +2 movement. So this kind of gives a little bit of randomness to how far the enemies move. So you're never going to be 100% certain of how they activate. A lot of the time they're just going to move, but you get all sorts of things. I think there's even one where they turn around. Yeah, you get one where they might turn around and start going back the other way. So in a stealth mission, you'll be trying to sneak behind the enemies, taking them out silently, or just moving past them and getting to your objective. And this deck is what's going to control their movements. Then you also get boss missions, where you'll be fighting sort of a dedicated boss battle. And those will involve a more complex type of enemy, such as the Sump Thresher that we've got here, this big nasty looking guy. Now, he's got 12 health per hero, 3 move and 8 points of armor, so he is going to be hard to do damage to, because of course armor reduces the amount of damage you do. And he's got all of these attacks down here. And boss enemies also have facings, so we know they've got a front, right and left, and that's going to affect how they attack and where. If you notice here, if you're attacking him from behind, he's got -2 armor. And this is his level 1 version as well. If we turn over to his level 2 version, I imagine he's a bit more deadly. Now, not only will these guys be more powerful in terms of their character card, but they also have their own AI deck, which will affect them specifically for what they do. And there's still more. They have their own health board, And just like the heroes, they will have different locations to attack. So they've got a total body health, just like the Drift Hunters, just like the hero characters, which can be anywhere from 0 all the way up to 100. I haven't actually tried playing against the Sump Thresher yet, so I'm not too sure exactly how he works in detail, but I do know they have different body locations to hit, they have their own AI deck, they look a lot more challenging. And I will be doing a playthrough of that at some point as well, so you can check that one out. And that's roughly it for enemies and really the majority of the mechanics for the core missions of the game. You know, there's so much stuff with this though. I mean, look at all this stuff that just, and like I said, this is just the prototype and there's all these cards for everything. But I really want to give you guys an indication of just how much there's going to be in this game. You know, we've also got upgrade cards, so you can upgrade your action deck as heroes. And, you know, we've got all these different abilities for different types of character. You know, we've got the Maverick here, has got the gunfighter ability. And these stars along the bottom tell us what level we have to be at to unlock these cards. So there's tons and tons of character progression here. I mean, that is an entire huge deck of potential upgrade cards for your characters. And since I'm talking about upgrades, we may as well take a quick look at the back of a character board. Because what's really cool about this is, firstly, right at the top here, you can look at this to see what kind of character you're going to be playing. So the Vanguard is pretty well rounded. He's not super mobile, and he's not very good at battlefield control, but he's got good offense, good defense, and good support. And it also nicely tells you here the character's complexity. He's pretty simple to play. So if you're newer to this kind of game, then this is the guy you're probably going to want to use. And then along the bottom, you've got skill paths. So each character has 3 of these. And these skill paths are kind of relating to those upgrade cards we saw. So if you look at some of the Vanguards here, we've got this one, Iron Legion. So this card, you would buy this in his Iron Legion skill path. And what you would have to do is buy a level 1 card in the Iron Legion path before you can buy, say, a level 2 in the Iron Legion path. So it kind of allows you to build your character in different ways. You know, relive the soldier's path as the ultimate frontline soldier, or you can go with Guardian, fight up close and personal to defend the innocent. So these are going to be different types of skill that the character is going to get. And you can either slowly upgrade all 3 of them, you know, giving your character a lot of low-level abilities that will add up to kind of make him maybe more well-rounded but not very powerful. Or you could focus on one skill path and turn him into the ultimate frontline trooper, or maybe the ultimate guardian. And you've got a nice little bit of background there as well of what this character's history is. Now, in the spirit of showing you how much you're getting in this game, I also want to show you the weapon deck. This is the weapon deck that just came with the prototype. I don't know if there's going to be a lot more weapons, but I think there's going to be a few more. And you just get tons of these different pistols, different shotguns, sniper rifles. You know, there's so many to choose from. You get different melee weapons as well. And well, this is a legendary. You know, they're color coded on the back. So you've got this legendary weapon here that just does ludicrous amounts of damage. And it even has its own action where you can fire it twice for 1 action point. So there's so much that comes with this. I mean, look at that Drill Fist Mark 8. Wow, that looks pretty powerful. And so I guess what I'm saying is there's so much content in this game. I think you're definitely going to be getting your money's worth. I can imagine this easily having, you know, 100+ hours of content. And so that's the end of this sort of introductory video to Terminus Frontier. And next we're going to go through some playthroughs, and then after I've spent some time with it, I'm going to give my final thoughts on this prototype and what I think of it and how it looks. And so thanks very much for watching and listening to me ramble about this. Thank you so much to Forgeborn Games for sending this to me. So thanks very much for watching this. I hope it's been informative, and I hope it's been helpful to you in some way, and I hope it'll help you consider whether you want to back this game or not. And also, thank you so much to Forgeborn Games for letting me look at this preview and get my hands on this prototype. And I wish you the best of luck in this endeavour, Forgeborn Games. I hope this game turns out exactly as you want it to, because I think it just looks so good. And I know I've said that a million times, but I feel like I've been waiting years for a science fiction, space opera, dungeon crawling board game that puts all these different elements into it that make for this kind of full and exciting experience that gives you lots of tactical options and lots of theme and lots of story. And there's even more to talk about this game. I haven't even talked about how the space travel system works, but if you're interested in that, then it is explained in quite a lot of detail on the Kickstarter page, and I'd recommend going and looking at that, because that looks like that's going to be kind of the meat of the story in the game, that you're really going to be getting involved as you travel around these space subsectors and do all these dealings with corporations and colonies and pirates. And it looks like it goes off in multiple paths as well, of you can kind of choose who you want to side with. So I'm going to stop rambling now, and I'm going to get on with actually playing through this so you guys can see how the game is played. So once again, just thanks so much for watching. If you liked these videos, then like, subscribe, share, all the rest of it. And check out Terminus Frontier by Forgeborn Games on their Kickstarter. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.